From deep within the undrained Republican-filled swamps of Florida, this is the KrassenCast, defending what's left, with hosts Brian and Ed Krassenstein.
And welcome to KrassenCast. As the 2020 presidential race heats up, we now have more than 20 Democratic candidates all vying to take on Trump in the next election. The field is crowded, but filled with unique ideas and lots of competition, which ultimately I think is going to lead to a much more polished candidate come the general election. As we get closer to the end of the year, Americans will become acquainted with quite a few new faces, all who want to be the next president, the 46th president of the United States. Today we have with us Democratic candidate for president in 2020, U.S. Representative Seth Moulton. Moulton's a member of the New Democrat Coalition and is a U.S. Congressman representing Massachusetts' 6th Congressional District. Welcome to the show, Congressman.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, with 22 Democrats now vying for the nomination in 2020, what makes you stand out from the rest?
Well, first of all, my background is different. I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually had the experience of leading troops in combat. And what that means is that in the midst of an incredibly divisive war, the Iraq War, a war that many of us disagreed with, I had to get a very diverse group of Americans from all over this country with different religious backgrounds, different political backgrounds, united behind a common mission for America. And in so many ways, I think that is exactly the kind of leadership we need from the next commander-in-chief in such a divided time in American history. I'm also the only one who's taking on Trump in his job, not just as president, but as commander-in-chief. And this is where he's weakest. He doesn't know what patriotism is about. He's making us weaker across the globe, not stronger. But for too long, Democrats have almost ceded these issues to Republicans. And we've got to take them back and show how we will make America stronger, safer, and more secure, both out in the world and at home.
Yeah, as a former Marine, what experiences or lessons have you learned in the service that you feel prepares you to be the next commander-in-chief?
Well, one of the first lessons you learn when you show up for training is that you can drop out of a run and they'll probably let you try it again. You can fail a test and they'll let you retake the test. But if you lie about anything, you're gone that afternoon. That's how fundamental trust is in leadership. And we have a commander-in-chief that we just cannot trust. I mean, whether you agree with Trump or not, you cannot trust a word that he says. I don't know a private in the Marine Corps who is less trustworthy than the commander-in-chief of the United States. Think about what that says about our president.
Yeah, that really says a lot. I agree. What is your take on how the Marines, other members of the Marines, are looking at President Trump? Do you think they respect him?
Fundamentally, I don't think many of them do. I would never claim to speak for all Marines or all veterans, but I hear from a lot of them because I keep in close touch with many of the Marines I served with. Many of them are my friends. They want a commander-in-chief that they can trust. They want a commander-in-chief who will stand up for the Constitution, not continually tear it apart. But the problem is, many of them feel that when they look to the other side of the aisle, that Democrats don't have much to offer. Many of them voted reluctantly for Trump because they didn't like the alternatives. And so the point is that we need to lead on these issues as Democrats as well. We need to show how we're going to make America strong and secure and safe both at home and abroad. Lead with moral authority again. If we show how we can make America strong, I think we'll win many of those veterans back.
Yeah, so there's been so much that's gone on in the last 2 years. So many things that Trump has messed up in the country. There's been policies. There's been trade wars to anything you can even think of. But in his first 100 days, in your first 100 days in office, what will be your most important issues you want to address and kind of turn back?
Well, first of all, before we even get to issues, I'm going to make it clear that I'm a president, a commander-in-chief that Americans can trust, that whether they agree or disagree with me, they will always know where I stand. Now, one of the most important priorities that we have to address is healthcare. We need to start getting more Americans healthcare, not taking it away. But my view on healthcare is unique in this race because I'm the only candidate who actually gets single-payer healthcare right now. I made a commitment to continue going to the VA, even as a member of Congress. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of single-payer healthcare. And just like we have competition in package delivery for the U.S. Postal Service, we have FedEx and UPS, I think we should have competition in healthcare as well. So I wouldn't force people off their private plans, but I would provide a public option, just like President Obama envisioned, to compete against those private plans and bring down premiums, prescription drug prices, and expand coverage for all Americans.
How do you suppose we do that while also bringing prices down? As we know, with Obamacare, the prices are still really high.
Well, there's not enough competition in the system with Obamacare. That's the problem. And that's why President Obama wanted to include a public option, but Congress took it out at the last minute. A public option that has to compete with the private sector would bring down prices for everyone. And just go back to that analogy of the Postal Service. I mean, imagine if Congress and the next president came in and said, we're going to put UPS and FedEx out of business so that the U.S. Postal Service is just providing package delivery on its own. Does anyone think that that would be good, that less competition would make the system better? No, of course not. And it's the same analogy if we just come in and force everybody onto a government healthcare plan. But if a public option, a government plan, call it Medicare for all, or I'd rather see a more modern version of Medicare, since that was a healthcare plan designed in 1963. Imagine if that competes with private options in the private sector. That competition is going to bring down prices, improve service, and that's just how a free market works. That's an American way to go about delivering healthcare.
Yeah, so you're basically recommending we have a kind of a Medicare for all, but also have competition and allow private companies to compete against that Medicare for all.
Exactly. And that will improve Medicare for all, and it will improve the private healthcare plans. You know, one of the things I've seen at the VA is there are some things the VA does well. For example, the VA negotiates prescription drug prices. Medicare doesn't even do that. So we have much lower prices for prescriptions at the VA than you get through Medicare. But on the other hand, we've all heard the stories of veterans literally dying on waiting lists trying to get care, or being unable to see mental health care professionals because the VA just doesn't have enough. So we need more competition in the system, and that's what my plan will provide.
Yeah. I saw an interview with you, and you recently spoke against socialism, and I think this healthcare plan kind of alleviates that label of socialism because you're allowing competition to come in, and it's not all government run. Where do you feel capitalism ends and socialism begins? And do you feel that, say, a Bernie Sanders is too close to that line?
Well, look, I'm not here to bash other Democrats, but the bottom line is that we are not a socialist country. We're a capitalist country, but we also have a capitalist system that right now is not fair to all Americans. I mean, I held a town hall recently, and I just asked the people in the audience, how many of you paid more than $1 in taxes last year? There were chuckles in the room, and of course, just about everybody raised their hands. And then I said, well, that means you paid more in taxes than Amazon. You paid more in taxes than Delta Airlines. What kind of a fair economic system is that? So I do believe in capitalism, but it has to be regulated to be fair. And we need a tax system that's fair to all Americans. So you're paying, comparable rates if you're working all day in a hard, tough job in a manufacturing facility, for example. You sit at a desk on Wall Street. I mean, right now, Wall Street investors are literally paying lower rates than hardworking American families. So we've got to have a capitalist system that's fair, that ensures equal opportunity for all. But we're fundamentally a country that's always based on this principle of equal opportunity, not equal results. We know that some people are going to get ahead and others won't succeed as much, but that competition is healthy. That's what always has made America such a strong country with such a strong economy.
So let's shift gears here now. And you recently co-sponsored the Cyber Ready Workforce Act, and you've called for a cyber wall to stop Russians from penetrating our election system. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, this is a great example of where national security affects Americans here at home. Of course, we've got to stop Russia from hacking our elections. That was the one unmistakable conclusion of the Mueller report. And regardless of how you feel about President Trump, there's no question that Mueller concluded that Vladimir Putin, one of the only people on earth who with his country could literally wipe out every American life in the space of about 20 minutes, Vladimir Putin wanted Donald Trump elected president, and every American should want to know why. And because we haven't responded to prevent hacking of the next election, I can guarantee you that the 2020 election will be hacked as well. But more than that, beyond Russia, China is literally stealing our jobs, our businesses, our business plans, our military secrets through the internet every single day. And yet the president has more money allocated for a southern border wall, a 5th century BC technology that we all know is not going to solve immigration, than he has for cyber protection for the entire United States. So we've got to totally rethink our national security for a new generation of threats. And it's a great example of why having strong national security affects the economic security of Americans here at home.
Why do you think it's so hard to get Republicans to support this? Do you think that it's just because they know that if Russia is hacking our elections or meddling in elections, it's going to benefit them?
I've been asked this question in a lot of different ways. Why don't Republicans believe in climate change? Or why can't Republicans keep our country safe? And a lot of people say, Seth, why is Congress so stupid? Why can't you get this through your heads? And my observation after being there for just a few years is that most of my colleagues are actually pretty smart. And what's lacking in Congress isn't intelligence. It's just courage. It's the courage to do the right thing. In this case, it's the courage for Republicans to stand up against their president and say, protecting our national security, protecting American citizens, protecting the integrity of our democracy is more important than just doing what Donald Trump says we should do.
Do you think it's partially because they're afraid of losing their seats if they go against the president? They're afraid that Trump's going to tweet something against them and encourage his base not to vote for them?
That's exactly my point. They're just scared. That's what I mean by lacking courage. They're more concerned about losing their reelection or getting on the wrong side of the president than doing the right thing for the country. And, I think it's good for every member of Congress to be reminded that when we took that oath, we swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, not our political party, not our political self-interest, the Constitution of the United States. It's actually the same oath that I took when I became a Marine Corps officer. That's what we should be doing the right thing for the country.
Yeah, as we watch the president and the GOP kind of continue to obstruct the Mueller report and prevent it from being seen by members of Congress, the full unredacted version, I think the more important thing, rather than just Trump's potential legal culpability, is the fact that they're covering up evidence that could be used against Russia to help us get out of this mess and help us understand what Russia did. And I think that's something that's being missed.
It's being completely missed. And it's being missed by everybody. I mean, that's the point, is that whether you're the most ardent Trump supporter or you're the biggest Trump hater, we should all want to know why Russia wanted him elected president. Russia is literally the only country on earth that could wipe us out. They've been a national security threat to the United States of America for the last 70 years. And Democrats and Republicans alike have stood up to the Russian threat. So why is Donald Trump different? We should want to know that. Every American should want to know that. That shouldn't be a political issue, a partisan issue. That's a fundamental issue of American national security.
Yeah, and speaking of the Mueller report, it seems that the Democratic Party's kind of split right now, with some calling for Trump's immediate impeachment and others kind of hesitant to do so. What's your thought on the Mueller report, and what steps do you think Congress should take next? Do you think impeachment is something they should be should be looking at right now?
Absolutely. But remember that Congress does two things. Fundamentally, we debate issues, and then after debate, we vote on them. That's the way Congress is supposed to work. I called for debate on impeachment last year. I voted for it long before most members of my party were even talking about it. And because, look, there's clearly enough evidence to have this debate. I mean, more than 30 of Trump's close associates have already been indicted. His campaign chairman is in prison. Don't tell me there's not enough to debate impeachment. I don't think it's time for a vote, though, because we don't have all the facts. We don't have the full unredacted version of the Mueller report yet. But we should be having this debate, and we should have started it a long time ago.
Yeah, I think part of the reason we don't have all the facts is that Trump's continuing to obstruct, and so is the GOP. What's the solution there if they're going to continue to hold back these witness testimonies and the actual unredacted report?
Well, this is actually one of the reasons why having an impeachment debate in Congress would help, because it would expand the powers to subpoena documents, to get more information, both from the administration and elsewhere. At the end of the day, we've got to stop this stonewalling. I mean, this is on the verge of a constitutional crisis, because it's our constitutional duty in Congress to hold the administration accountable. Whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, it's Congress's duty to act as a check and balance on the executive. And we've got to make sure we do that.
You touched on China a bit earlier regarding this, the cyber warfare. Uh, as you know, we're in the midst of a pretty massive trade war with China. Trump appears to be fumbling the issue pretty big. Uh, is there a solution to what's going on, and how would you handle it if you became president?
Yes, Trump is completely fumbling this. He clearly has no strategy, and he doesn't seem to understand how basic economics work. But even more, he doesn't understand how this trade war is impacting American farmers, American consumers. Everyone who shops at Walmart is going to see prices go up in the next couple of weeks because of his trade war. We need a comprehensive strategy to address China. We need to build the cyber wall I've been talking about to stop their hacking of our businesses. We need to build a Pacific version of NATO to control the rise of China and North Korea. And we do need to work through the World Trade Organization. It's not perfect, but every case the Obama administration brought against China that's been adjudicated has been done so in our favor. That's why I'm bringing national security issues to this campaign. That's why I think it's important that we take on Donald Trump in his performance as commander-in-chief, because that's where he's weakest. And so that's how we can beat him. And if you think any of these issues are important and you're listening today, I hope you'll go on my website and just donate $1, $5, $10, but even just $1, so that these issues can be part of the Democratic debate. Help me get on the debate stage and make sure that Democrats will lead on making America stronger, safer, more secure, and fundamentally more patriotic in the future.
How close are you to being on a debate stage?
Well, I only started this race 3 weeks ago, so we've got a little ways to go, but we're growing quickly with our number of donors, but it's that 65,000 donors that we have to reach to get on the stage. And, it's taken many of the candidates several months to get there. So that's why I could use your help. Go on SethMoulton.com, SethMoulton.com, and just throw in a little bit of a contribution, $1 even, to help make sure that these issues are part of the Democratic debate. I think it's critical that we take on Trump where he's weakest, and that's what I'm doing in this campaign.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people don't realize, is that if you got 65,000 $1 donations, and you're on the stage, and you get to be seen on mainstream media and get your ideas out there. So I think it's important too that people realize that.
Well, thank you. And I think it's got to be part of this debate if we're going to beat Trump. I think that at the end of the day, Donald Trump is going to be much harder to beat than many Democrats want to believe. That's what I see when I go to the tough parts of the country that we need to win if we're going to win this election. And so we've got to have all our assets on the table. We've got to make sure we're challenging Trump where he's weakest. And we've got to show how Democrats will lead in the future, not just here at home, to make sure that we address climate change, we solve the healthcare crisis, we solve the immigration crisis, but also how we restore our moral authority abroad so that everyone in the world will look to America as a leader. At the end of the day, for all our problems, I believe in this country. I'm a patriot above all else. And I want other Americans to believe in our country so much too, that they want to get up and serve to make it a little bit better. We're not a perfect country. We never have been, but we've always been strengthened by those Americans who believe in our country enough that they're willing to step up and serve to make our country better. That's what this campaign is about. That's who I am. And I hope you'll consider supporting me and making sure that these issues are part of the Democratic debate.
I want to touch on a few other little things before we let you go. The Green New Deal has become kind of a talking point among Democrats, and Republicans are kind of using it against Democrats in a way to try and make it appear that they are going to blow everybody's money on this deal to bring back climate change, which they don't believe in. You were a big proponent of nuclear energy. What are your thoughts on other forms of clean energy like wind and hydro and solar? And what are your thoughts on the Green New Deal?
Well, I was one of the first co-sponsors of the Green New Deal when it was just a framework. And I've been releasing the components that I think should make it up so that we not only address climate change, but we grow American jobs in the process. And that's my version of the Green New Deal, something that makes sure that we win the green tech revolution. So China is buying green technology from us, not the other way around. And that applies to everything from wind and solar and hydropower to next generation safe nuclear power. That's why I've come out in support of a massive federal investment in nuclear fusion, because whoever develops that transformational power technology will be selling it to the rest of the world. And that should be us. America should be leading on that.
I agree. America should definitely be leading the push towards clean energy. So that's all the time we have today. Thanks again for appearing on KrassenCast, and I hope to have you on again as we get closer to the general election.
Well, I look forward to it. Thanks very much for having me on.
That's a wrap on this week's edition of KrassenCast. Thanks, as always, to our listeners. If you haven't already done so, be sure to check us out on Patreon at KrassenCast.com, and be sure to subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube.